A special edition of the Shaun Starr Show with Marco D'Amico together again. Thank you so much for all the views we got to kick off a brand new week, right? When we talk about the Montreal Canadiens wrapping up their 4-game road trip with exclamation point, beating Florida 4-2, setting up tonight's massive game for the fourth and final time of the regular season. Can the Montreal Canadiens sweep the season series with the Panthers? No, that's not why we're here today. We're here today. Why? Because a couple of Montreal Canadian prospects, their collegiate seasons, their European seasons are over. Let's talk about Oliver Kapanen. His Timrå side lost the 6th game of their quarterfinal series against Frölunda yesterday, ending the series 4-2. Why are we talking about this? Because Oliver Kapanen plays for them, Marco, as you're very well aware, made the team out of camp. Let's talk about Oliver Kapanen and what are we looking at? Montreal Canadiens for this home stretch or Laval Rocket home stretch of the regular season and into the playoffs? How do you see this sorting itself out, Marco?
I think there's a why not both kind of meme that we can insert in this conversation. I think everybody is kind of not sure what the rules are. So just to clarify, Oliver Kapanen, because he was loaned out, like he has a valid NHL contract that kicked in this year. He was loaned to Timrå prior to the I believe 60-day limit that they had before early December. They sent him back to Europe to get first line ice time, which was what he was, a top line center for Timrå and a point per game one at that, which is not something to sneeze at 21 years old in a very defensive league that is the SHL in Sweden. And so he now has the opportunity to come back to Montreal or to go back to Laval. They have both options on the table. There's some CBA work that needs to be done in the sense that he needs to be assigned to Laval and then called up to Montreal as a regular call-up. They have 2 left anyway, so it's not that big a deal. But the question simply is, where does he go? And I think, the way that we can look at this is Kent Hughes at his trade deadline, presser mentioned that Laval would have help down the stretch and into the playoffs with a guy like Oliver Kapanen. A lot of people are reading into that directly, thinking to themselves, well, hey, that means he's going to Laval. Not so fast. I think, it would not make much sense, in my opinion, especially considering what's going on with the Montreal Canadiens right now. I don't think it would make sense for them to sit Joshua Roy and to play Michael Pezzetta 5 minutes a game, only to send Kapanen, who was better than both this season in Montreal, to Laval. I don't see the benefit. I think they think that Joshua Roy still has things to work on, and they want him to be mentally ready for the playoffs. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw Kapanen called up to the Canadiens, tried in an offensive role, maybe not on the second line with Laine and Uhuk, but definitely get him back, get him started, get him acclimatized, because this is a guy, in my opinion, that could help you in the run, because this is a guy that was in a do or die situation for the last week and a half. You're coming in, this is a guy who played hard defensive hockey, and now you can plug him into your lineup on a third or fourth line, and he won't hurt you. And in fact, the upside of what he can give you is far higher than the other 2 you have.
Well, walk me through that then, right? Because, I think you answered the obvious follow-up question about if he does come and let's say he jumps on with the Montreal Canadiens, and as you correctly point out, he was pretty much a point-a-game player, 36 games, 35 points, and scored, 15 goals for Timrå, right? And then, as we mentioned in the lead-up, losing in 6 games to Frölunda, that I could get the point that you make about easing him in, but at whose expense? Does that mean Alex Newhook goes back to the wing to make room for Kapanen down the middle? What happens to Dvorak Evans' role? Walk me through how you think that could be solved if he does join the Canadiens at any point in the 9 games left.
I don't think that they'll have a problem shifting him to the wing. They shifted Owen Beck, who was a career center, to the wing.
Good point.
Just to fit him in the lineup. So to me, I don't necessarily see it as a problem. I think that the more depth you have, the better. And if something happens to one of your centers, knock on wood for the Canadiens, well, then you could just, pivot him right into the center spot the way that they pivoted Newhook into the center spot. So there's nothing stopping the Canadiens from running a line A new hook Kapanen line if they feel comfortable. But I think they want to see what Heineman. Yeah, but I think they want to see what Heineman can do there as well, or they want to give Gallagher his dues because he is on pace for 20 goals. I don't think that was on anybody's bingo card this year. So I think, there's going to be opportunity, but it gives options. Whereas right now, with the way the Canadiens are constructed and the way that Martin St. Louis is utilizing his lines, the Montreal Canadiens are basically a 2 to 3 line team when they're all on, right? If not, the way that the fourth line is utilized is just basically there. And I think that's kind of the problem, whereas the fourth line used to be a strength, right? Evans and Armia used to be, all kinds of fire. And then unfortunately that's not working out. But maybe swapping out Heineman on the second line and then having Kapanen on the fourth with them, that might jumpstart something a little bit. And again, you never know. Like a young kid like that could go up your lineup very quickly. He was impressive towards the tail end of his time with Montreal. He seemed to be finding his legs there. With that added confidence of being such an offensive player in Sweden, why not try him in Montreal? And then I think the beauty of it is if the Canadiens make the playoffs, then he can just join them in the playoffs. If the Canadiens don't make the playoffs, he's still eligible to go back to Laval. So it's a no-lose situation, in my opinion, for the Canadiens. Because what does he have? Like, what would be the benefit? Let's talk about this. Like, what would be the benefit of going to Laval only right now? Like now, when we know that the Laval Rocket have already qualified for the playoffs, like what would he gain? I'm asking.
Versus, I mean, to me, when I think about the fact that both worlds exist, that he can wet his beak at the NHL again for the second time, and then go to Laval. Like, there's no reason in my mind whatsoever that the Rocket should be the only option, tunnel vision, that he should only look at Centropolis and playing with Pascal Vincent. Absolutely not. Like, I love the point you had made earlier about looking at the Canadiens' depth, looking at the role Michael Bezzetta plays with, knowing that Joshua Roy, who I personally, my own opinion, I thought his game was getting a little bit better, and I was kind of surprised to not see him play on Sunday afternoon, but whatever. That's MSL's decision to make. But with those two names and the point that you brought up, I'm all about challenges. I'm all about giving guys an opportunity to say, hey, prove that you can do something. And then the money point is that when the Canadian season ends, whenever it ends, Laval is an option because it isn't. I know we're not talking about Jacob Fowler, but Jacob Fowler is a completely different topic. There's one option. It's either amateur tryout versus entry-level contract with the Montreal Canadiens. So, like, you know what I mean. It's not the two worlds that exist for Oliver Kapanen. So it's just more reps, brother. It's just about getting more reps in at two different levels. And so let me ask you this now. Let me ask you this as we talk about Oliver Kapanen and what he is likely to do. Where is he likely to play? What's the scouting report for those that are watching and saying, oh, I've heard about Kapanen. I just heard Marco talk about how good of a season he had in the SHL. What's the scouting report? What can Canadian fans look forward to seeing if Oliver Kapanen hits on all his marks?
Yeah, I mean, when he was drafted, there was talk of middle six center. There are some that are a little bit more skeptical on his potential. You look at guys like Simon Boivard with the Sick podcast and BPM Spall season as nothing more than a fourth liner. I mean, it all depends on his development curve. I think in terms of talent level, I mean, look, there's a level of hope, and some would even call it hopium when it comes to projecting where a prospect is going to pan out, right? Like, I think everyone understands that an Ivan Demidov is going to be a top line player. Whether or not he's going to be the best prospect the Canadian or the best player the Canadiens have had since Guy Lafleur, that's a debate. That's something to have a conversation about. But if we're just simply talking Kapanen, I think Kapanen could be an everyday bottom six player right now. And, there is upside for him to hold down, similar to Owen Beck, a third line role or more in a specific situation. But if on a competitive team, I see him as a third line center or a third line winger. But he has the ability, in my honest opinion, he has the offensive ability to be, I would say, a regular, dangerous secondary scoring option. So you would be able to put him anywhere on your second, third, or fourth line if he pans out. Now, that's a big if, right? Like it's a big if for all players, right? Like I think we were saying the same thing about Hudson like not too long ago, where he's putting up, when he broke or when he supplanted Brian Leach's freshman scoring record in the NCAA. A lot of people were saying, like that he could be a Norris level player, but you didn't want to get too ahead of yourself. I think now we can look at it today and say the development curve happens so quickly that we can confidently say that Lane Hudson is going to be a top pair defenseman that has the potential to challenge for a Norris Trophy in the future should he continue this momentum, right?
Right.
So with Kapanen, I think you need to see more reps at the NHL level because, again, being a point per game player in Sweden, A, is tough, but B, is a different kind of hockey, right? It's larger ice in Sweden still. So you're coming back to smaller ice, smaller time, quicker moves, quicker this. You've way less space, way more physical, way more contact. So it's a different kind of game. You have to get used to that. So I that's why I don't put I don't like to say, but again, I think right now he could be of use to the Canadiens in the bottom six like that.
Yeah, I mean, and on the extreme positive side of the spectrum, I mean, can you see a world that exists in which he plays in any of the 9 remaining regular season games? Marco and I are talking on game day, Habs and Panthers at 7:00 tonight on TSN 690. That, I mean, is it too optimistic? Like, is there a way that maybe MSL, the organization, come to some sort of determination? Let's see him down the middle at the 2 spot in any of the 9 regular season games. Ça marche pas de même, ça?
No, not on a roster that sat Arbor Jacki in instead of David Savard, given the way that both have played over the last 2 weeks. I think there's a level of experience that's required here. I also think that because the Canadiens are so heavy with right shot centers, right, and the overusage of Dvorak, now having Newhook as another center that they could take the faceoffs and go up the puck, move up the puck. Now you have 2 right shots, 2 left shots. I don't think they want to play around with that. What it does help, and I think this is why I wouldn't mind seeing, Kapanen with a guy like Newhook on his wing, is that Kapanen could take the left side faceoffs, and then Newhook could take the left side faceoffs. Kapanen could take the right, and you increase that line's ability to start the play with the puck, which is extremely important when Patrick Laine is the winger and you want to get him the puck as quickly as possible. I'm not saying that he's a useless. Outside of that, I think he's done quite well in terms of playing defensively of late and getting into lanes and harpooning pucks and corralling loose pucks and beating guys to the play. But I'm just saying, when you see Patrick Laine alone on the ice in the offensive zone, the instinct on everybody's mind is get him the puck. And there's a very easy way to do that when you have possession of it. And so we've seen it. We look at the Florida game on Sunday.
Yeah.
And the Canadiens had 55, 56% on the faceoff circle. And it showed because they had a lot of dangerous possession time from faceoff wins, which usually is the issue for them, especially on the power play. They winning faceoffs on the power play seems to be a really big problem for the Canadiens, which is why you have guys like Christian Dvorak on a second power play wave from time to time. So all this to say, it gives them options they don't have now, versatility they don't have now. And Martin St. Louis has always been about options. So I would be shocked if Kapanen just came in and was a center for the Canadiens right away. Now, if anything happens, any injuries, and wood again, he could get slotted back in, no problem. So to me, I think they'll be on the wing. They'll be given some form of offensive leeway. Maybe a couple of games in, second power play wave instead of some of the, like, for example, Yoel Armia's wrist is finished right now. So maybe he slots in his, that he's a warrior. Let's give it that. But unfortunately, you can see that he can't really unleash, right? And so maybe then slotting a Kapanen in his place makes more sense.
Hey, let's end on this. I know we wanted to talk about Oliver Kapanen, but we're talking here on Tuesday, and Jacob Fowler hasn't signed. Ryan Leonard's with Washington. This could all change by the time you're watching this. I don't know, but in the here and now, what's your best guess? Why do you think Fowler didn't sign yesterday?
I think it's a more complicated situation when it comes to Fowler than it is a forward, especially a forward of
or even Lane Hudson last year, right?
Ryan, or even Lane Hudson. I mean, the Canadiens didn't have anything to play for last year, and they weren't going to send, a guy of Lane Hudson's caliber to the AHL. Like, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And Laval wasn't making the playoffs last year, so there was no point.
Yeah.
Finish the season in Montreal and your ELC, no problem. Goalies are a different breed, right? Like, in recent years, we haven't seen goalies. We haven't seen many goalies out of the NCAA just burn the first year of their contract, except for the top level ones. I'm thinking Devon Levi, Montreal born. I'm thinking Spencer Knight.
Yeah.
But
Demko?
Oh man, I don't remember Demko.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and check. But I mean,
those were the last two. Knight and Demko. Those were the last two big American goaltenders, right?
You're right. And Levi being the Canadian playing for Northeastern at the time, like also forced Buffalo, who was in desperate need of goaltending depth. They still are. Let's call it spade a spade. So like there was more need, whereas the Canadians are not what Florida was then, are not what Buffalo is then, now, and seemingly forever. And so they're not a team rebuilding, they're a team chasing the playoffs. Whereas Laval is a team that could give him games, right? And I think that's the conversation being had, because on one side, if Fowler were to sign his entry-level contract, he would burn the first year, he would get his $95,000 signing bonus, he would get paid NHL money for the next 2 weeks, but would he get a game?
Right.
Unlikely if the Canadiens are in the run for it right now and trying to desperately make the playoffs as the last possible seed in all of NHL hockey. But then on the flip side, if he were to sign a professional tryout or an amateur tryout, depending on which way you want to look at it, and delay the signing of his entry level to the 2025-2026 season, he would be eligible to go to Laval. They were already qualified, so you can give him 2-3 games and see what happens in the playoffs, because the other thing to keep into consideration, and this is the thing that messes with the maybe, and this is why the discussion is happening, the Montreal Canadiens papered Jacob Fowler at the trade deadline, making him eligible for the playoffs for Laval. If that's your line of thinking, and they're using him off and on in Montreal, are the Canadiens going to sign Jacob Fowler, ultimately burn his first year and send Fowler down? Is there going to be a swap? Could they call it Primo? Like, there is a goalie puzzle happening right now with the Montreal Canadiens. And so the two options very much are only AHL, only NHL. And for Fowler being the top goaltender in the NCAA, in many people's opinion, mine, I don't count. You'd have to give him the same kind of treatment, or they would expect the same kind of treatment as other stars like Gabe Perreault, like Ryan Leonard that we've seen, and other players that have signed out of the NCAA. The difference simply is where's the best opportunity, and I think that's the conversation being had. So there's your delay, but I don't think there will be much of a delay. In my conversations with Jacob Fowler, my phone would light up when we would start talking about Montreal the city, Montreal the organization. There is a significant, for a guy that was born in Florida, there's a significant amount of familial and appreciation connection when it comes to Montreal. His grandfather obviously marrying a local here, and his father having come up to Montreal very often in his youth. There's a soft spot in the Fowler family for Montreal. There is no shock. It's just a question of what's the avenue. So there's no story here other than a question of when.
Fascinating. Keep it locked. To the Shaun Starr Show with yours truly and Marco D'Amico. There are a lot of balls in the air with the home stretch on in a big way on this game day. Habs and Panthers for the fourth and final time. One of 4 games the Montreal Canadiens will play. Marco D'Amico and I will be all over it, breaking it down and projecting and moving forward all the time. Marco, thanks for the special. Yeah, go ahead.
I have one final thing to say, and I find this cool for Canadiens fans. Gabe Perreault is wearing number 94 for the Rangers today. The same number his father wore. Hey
now. I like that. I like those a lot. As I've gotten older, I appreciate those stories.
And a fun tidbit, and just before we let it go,
Yeah.
Jacob Fowler is so ready to come to Montreal that he was taking French lessons the last 2 years at Boston College.
Dis-moi pas.
Oh yeah, and
so
he
there's
was
no Adam
learning
Fox
regular.
here. He's not going to Adam Fox the Canadians.
So he spent 2 years learning French, and then would practice his French with Gabe Perreault, who's fluent because obviously his dad.
Of course, yeah.
And Gabe Perreault told us that he would try his best not to teach him the swear words, but from a time to time, a tabarnak used to come out, and let's just say Jacob is not very aware of what that means and says it quite often.
Yeah. I love that. On se comprend très bien ici. Marco D'Amico, excellent stuff as always. I know Habs fans are really going to enjoy this, especially the Jacob Fowler part. People want to see care level. They love to see care level. It really matters here. And then ultimately the excitement, like we've talked about, wait till the heartbeat of the rebuild is here. Jacob Fowler is a part of that heartbeat. Oliver Kapanen might be. Ivan Demidov certainly is a part of the giant
He's an
heartbeat.
artery.
No kidding. So let's go, man. Let's go. Having some fun as always. And we'll be back tomorrow with more perspective, certainly on a Canadiens veteran. Marco brings up a good point, talking about Lane Hudson, Logan Mailloux, could a veteran with a year left on his contract. What's the future there? Trade bait, maybe? Make sure you're with us tomorrow morning for more on that. Marco, thanks as always. We'll catch up again.
Take care, Shaun.